What up, Leedz? Welcome. Today we got a good interview with DJ Mrok. It's going to be a good one. Shout out to everybody enjoying this summer. Do it like that. Try to spell this real quick. I messed it up. Yeah, we'll leave it. Close enough. Forgot the with. Interview DJ Mrok. It looks like he's here right now, so we're gonna go in and shout out Jules in the building. Here we go. Hey man, what up?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Chilling. You can hear me all right?
I can hear you good. How about you?
Yeah, we're good. This is standard sound check.
Love it. Yeah, I'm just going to up the volume on my phone, actually.
Cool. So I just want to welcome everybody tuning in to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast. We got a very special guest today. We got DJ Mrok. This is our first time meeting and talking, so nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Yeah, definitely, man. It looks like you've been, we have more in common, I think, than I was aware of. I didn't realize, and I've seen your name on your latest project. You know, you work with Black Medine, who are good friends of mine. But I had no idea that you were from Massachusetts. Or lived in Massachusetts.
Man. Yeah, I spent a lot of time there. I think from when I was 10 till I graduated college. Lived in Framingham and went to school at Boston University, BU. So, yeah, definitely Massachusetts is my stomping grounds for sure.
Where were you before you moved to Framingham? Where were you?
New Jersey, actually. And I have all my relatives are in Philadelphia, so that's where I got the Philly hip hop influence from. So, moved around as my dad's job changed, pretty much.
What did your dad do?
So he was in like software engineering and worked at some different companies. At one point, he was working at Raytheon and helped develop the Aegis missile system that a lot of the Navy ships still use. So
damn,
he was in all that. Yeah, my brain works completely different. So
so you ended up in Framingham. What was that like? You know, for people that don't know, Framingham's about 30 minutes outside of Boston. Up, I believe, Route 9. Is that what it is? Is it Route 9 or is it the Pike?
Yeah, it's Route 9, man.
Yeah, it's Route 9. Yeah. And it's a lot. It's like I got a lot of friends from it that lived out there. I shout out Speak the Rebel and a few others. I forget. Jules. I think Jules lives in the producer. Jules lives in Framingham and a bunch of others. So
nice.
There is a close unity with Framingham and New England hip hop. There's a lot of music going on out there. So I'm glad you're a part of that legacy. But what was it like? What was it like back then, growing up there, and music-wise and everything?
So that's actually where I got my first taste of hip hop. We had just moved to Framingham, and it was my first day of school. I'll try not to make the story too long, but I'll never forget it. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know like where I fit in, where I belong. So it's recess. I'm out on the playground at Hemingway Elementary School, if that rings a bell for anybody, in Framingham. And I'm kind of walking around and I'm trying to figure out like, man, where do I fit? It's definitely not with the athletes. I'm terrible at sports. And I heard music coming around the corner. So I followed that, and these kids were breakdancing. Someone had actually brought a boombox and a little piece of cardboard to school with them that day. And they're out there breakdancing. I'd never seen b-boying, breakdancing. I didn't even know what they were doing. I actually thought they were fighting because it looked really like physical, you know? And I'm like watching from the sidelines, and I'm like, I got to see what this is. So I go over there. Like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're breakdancing, man. You wanna join? And I'm like, I don't know how. And I'm like, more importantly, like, what are you playing? And they're like, oh, that's Rockbox. And I'm like, what's Rockbox? They're like, it's a song, you know, from Run DMC. I'm like, I don't know who's Run DMC. And then they told me about that. And then the next song that came on was Stick 'Em by Fat Boys. And anyway, they introduced me to hip hop and b-boying and graffiti culture, because then they were showing me a notebook where they had all these graffiti designs, and I was hooked from there, man. So that was back in like 84, 85.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild, man. My high
Yeah.
school, my elementary school, there was no really hip hop, you know. I was a little later than you, but it was all rock music. It was all 80s rock.
Yep.
That was it.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
it, man. You know what I mean? Like I knew about Fresh Prince from MTV. That was about it. Like that's all I had. Run DMC was didn't really hit my elementary. But
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I would say that that was pretty common though for my like middle school, elementary school, and even in the high school.
yeah,
Like hip hop wasn't like it is now. You know, it was
no,
really underground, and you know, it just you were kind of an oddball if you were like a white kid listening to hip hop back then.
right.
And now it's everywhere. So, but yeah, there was a lot of hair bands and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff, new wave. But I was
yeah,
always hip hop. Yeah.
yeah. That's dope. Now you talk about Philly hip hop in particular being a huge influence on you. Obviously, since you're from out there, was there specific Philly hip hop that you got into at a younger age, or did that come later?
Yeah, you know, it ironically kind of hit me around the same time as what I was hearing in Framingham. A lot of what
Yeah,
I was hearing in Framingham was all the New York stuff.
right.
And until obviously like Ice-T and NWA came along and really
Yeah,
opened up the West stuff. But when I was in Philly, I'm sorry, when we would go visit my family in Philly, I would be exposed to a lot of it, either hearing it outside my grandmother's window,
right.
or cars going by, or listening to Lady B on the radio. And that's where I was exposed to Schoolie D and early Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. And
Yep,
from there, it went into like Tough Crew and Cash Money and Marvelous and Three Times Dope, and you know all the Philly acts. And I just remember like it was very similar to New York, but something a little bit different about it. To me, it's like funkier. I can't describe it, but especially the DJs, man, they're wicked on the cut. And so I just was exposed to that early on, and I'm like, man, I love this stuff.
yeah,
But I go back to Massachusetts looking for it, and it's like I can't find it anywhere. So it was kind of funny. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Schoolie D, some people credit as being the first gangster rapper. Do you agree with that?
As far as I can pinpoint, I mean, I think PSK kind of started it all, whether he intended that to be a gangster rap song or not.
Yeah,
I think you can trace the origins back to that. And then Ice-T will tell you that he modeled 6 in the Morning off of the flow of PSK. So, yeah, I got to give it to Schoolie on that one. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Philly, in Philadelphia, even today, you know, their whole hip hop scene is just incredible. You know, from
Yeah.
back then, from what you're telling me to now, it's just like, wow, everything in between, man. Philly really got it going on. Big
Yeah.
city, you know, big city, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. And this is just a little bit of trivia here nor there, but they have their own graffiti style out there too, which I'm
Hmm.
really into graffiti art. And it's called the Philly Wicked style. So my production company is called Philly Wicked Productions, and it's named as like a tribute to that. But it's real like sharp vertical like tags and everything. It looks like you don't want to touch it or you'll cut your hand. So they've got a lot going on out there, and they've contributed a lot to hip hop. And yeah, just was exciting to grow up with being exposed to that for sure.
So you do graffiti yourself?
I do not.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I was trying to, and I'm gonna stick with music, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like nowadays graffiti is just, you know, people know about it, but I don't think they like, it doesn't, people don't associate it with the culture so much with current hip hop as they do like
Right.
back then, right? Back then it was graffiti, breakdancing, DJing, MCing.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's just like rapping,
Yeah.
producer, rapping,
Right.
producer, you know, and we like graffiti. Well, that's like this old, like, it's like, it's it, well, it doesn't help that it can be illegal either. That doesn't give, you know, you know, you can get in trouble for it if you put it on the wrong place, but, you
Yeah.
know, but it's not in the forefront like it used to be. Does that bother you being such a fan?
Yeah, you know, it's a little disappointing because I feel like for me, hip hop is the soundtrack, right? And
Right,
then like, graffiti is the movie, if you will. It's the visuals.
right,
And then you couple that with breakdancing, and it's just like this complete package. And growing up being surrounded by really cool graffiti on trains passing by and under bridges and, you know, wherever, and seeing that not so much anymore, it's like, oh man, we're missing part of the culture. You know, it's not as, like you said, it's not at the forefront as it used to be. Maybe what's cool now though is it's almost becoming a little more mainstream where people are hiring graph artists to do like murals and stuff on their store. That. So at least it's living on that way, but some people hate that because they're like, oh, that's not real graffiti. You know, you're getting paid to do a mural. So I don't know. However, it's
better than getting arrested.
Yeah, heck yeah, man.
That's the problem. That's the problem with graffiti. You know, it's like, I love it too, but the legal system comes down. I know people that have done serious time for graffiti. You know, I've gone to jail multiple times for graffiti. So, I mean, that's, if you put it on the wrong building, I mean, you're going to get nailed, you know, and that's the reality of it, you know. So these murals that people are getting paid to do it, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. You know? Yeah, it keeps at least some form of the art alive, and maybe it exposes it to people that normally wouldn't see it, and also maybe their mind about it, because in my mind, it's absolutely art, and it's crazy that people are going to jail over art. So,
well, they're going to jail over vandalism. It's not. It's not art. You know what I mean? Like I love it too, man. But you know, but some owner that owns a building might not appreciate it. You know, that's the flip side to it. It was different back in the day when they were all abandoned buildings.
That's
true.
Yep.
You know, no one gave a shit about those buildings.
Right.
And you know, and they were able to do it, and it didn't matter. But you know, then you know, when the landlord Matt cares, you know, and the police, you know, it's unfortunate what it became. That the legal system came down on it. But
I hear you. Yep. Just like,
you know, there's two sides to it. You know.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure, I get it.
So so the other thing I want to go into is you started. You went to college at Boston University, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you started the first hip hop radio show at Boston University, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
91?
Yep. It was 91, and I was heavily influenced by what WERS 88.9 at night was doing. And
okay, so they were at 88.9 at night was going on in 91. Do you know when 88.9 actually started doing 88.9 at night?
I want to say it was the late 80s, because I could have sworn I remember hearing it, you know, back then.
Wow.
And someone out there might correct me on that, but I remember being an avid fan since the late 80s. And when I got to Boston University, I thought for sure there was already going to be a hip hop station, and you know, they were inviting students to, you know, get involved with different things. And I'm like, oh, you guys got a radio station? I'd love to host a show. And I'm like, yeah, if you guys don't have a hip hop show already, I would love to do that. And they're like, yo, hip hop? No, we don't. I'm like, all right, sign me up. I'll do it. So yeah, so I was the one that started it there, and I had it for a couple years, and I really enjoyed it. It was awesome.
For those who don't know, they're listening, you know, 88.9 at night in Boston, Emerson College. It was a huge radio station for the city, and put on, you know, was playing exposed a lot of people in New England to hip hop because its bandwidth, it could reach all the way up to southern Maine. And I don't know how far south it went to, but I was in New Hampshire listening to 88.9, not in the late 80s, but you know, in the mid to late 90s, I was listening to it, and exposed us to me and all my friends to a wide array of hip hop culture that we weren't exposed to, because back then there's no internet, there's just MTV and what's in strawberries. So, you know, like
strawberries.
So 88.9 was like the tastemaker place, you know, and they, you know, and they would play local music too, so they would tie it in with all the classic stuff and put in local music, and it was really a launching spot for a lot of careers that came out of the Boston music scene, and obviously inspired you. So, you know, talk about what they would play, what 88.9 was doing for you. What inspired you about 88.9 back then? Because I'm curious, in the late 80s, what inspired you about it?
Man, so for those that know me, it's no secret, the late 80s is my favorite era of hip hop. 1988 just seems like when everything went crazy at the same time.
Yeah.
And I love other years and that kind of thing, but there was so much that they were playing, and what was really dope about what they were doing is they were, you know, mixing stuff. Sound like they're mixing stuff live, either that or they were doing recordings of their mixes, but you know, they were going in and out of like, you know, an MC Shan beat and combining it with something else, and I hadn't heard that before, and I was like, oh my God, what are they doing? And, you know, they were cutting it up live and everything, and it just sounded incredible. And they were exposing me to songs that I hadn't heard before. And so I'm sitting there listening, and I'm frantically writing down like anything that I can, you know, if they didn't say the name of the song, I'm trying to like catch the lyrics, you know, so I can go try to find it in the store. Strawberries, like you mentioned. And
Did
of
you like
course,
rap it to the guy behind the desk? Like, yo,
yeah.
what song is this? Kick in the door, you know.
Yeah.
Guys like,
he's like, get out of my store. Yeah.
you're like, you know this one? Him? No.
Yeah. So I actually did that in a record store at Skippy. Do you know Skippy White's in Boston?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a legendary spot.
Yeah. I actually did that in there, and the guy helped me out.
He knew.
Yeah, he knew. It was
Skippy White was like 20 years older than everybody that was buying stuff in that. So
heck yeah, yeah. But and so it was hostile. We were gonna rob you, and they took we're gonna rock you. We will rock you, and they put we're gonna rob you, and yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's a hip hop song. They're talking about robbing someone over "We Will Rock You" by Queen. He's like, oh yeah, that's hostile. I've got it on vinyl. It's back there. So I grabbed it.
that's hilarious. That's hip hop. That's hip hop in its finest.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anyway, they were playing all this stuff I hadn't heard before, and they were also promoting early on the Source magazine, which was a newsletter back in the day.
Yep.
And that's how I started subscribing to the Source. And it was literally like the first one I got was like this folded up yellow piece of paper, really like underground, simple. And oh my God, you know how hindsight's 2020. I wish I kept that. I don't have any of those anymore, but I had the original like Source issues when they were just 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Yeah.
But I loved it, man.
I wish I saved all my sources. I'm not as early as you. I was like, I had a subscription in like 93, 94, and I threw them all away. You know, as a kid, you don't realize how special things are going to be later on in life.
You don't, man. You don't. Like,
save it all. I tell everybody, save it all now, you know?
You got to. I lost a lot of my collection from back in the day, too, because, you know, at the time I was selling stuff off or whatever, and I have so many regrets. But anyway, yeah.
So let's talk about 88, because that's such a golden era, early golden era, right? Was that technically the golden era? 88 starts then? It's always a debate. I always used to think that the golden era was the 90s, but I guess people say late 80s maybe is where it starts. Yeah,
and I guess it's really subjective. I'm pretty flexible. I'm like 87 through 93 is my golden era. So
let's talk about the MCs there. What were your top artists there and albums of that year?
Man, easily Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. I believe that came out in 88, and if there's people out there that, you know, are like cringing because I'm getting the dates wrong, forgive me.
We might have Dart Adams come after you in a little bit.
Yeah, right. Unpopular opinion, but I loved Tougher Than Leather by Run DMC when that came out.
The movie?
No, yeah, not the movie was something. It was something.
It was all right.
Yeah. But I love the album, man. I was all for, you know, Beats to the Rhyme and Run's House, and I was just always a Run DMC fan. But I think people were expecting another Raising Hell, and they didn't get it. So that was like a jewel for me. And I'm trying to think what else came out. There was so much at that time, man.
Well, let's talk about the artists then. Like, what were the artists that you were like? What were your top artists? That obviously Run DMC, Public Enemy. Who else you got in there?
I guess there's still the people that I love today, man. It's, you know, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap, Ice Cube.
Were you KRS, Boogie Down?
Dude, the second album from them with My Philosophy on there, one of my favorite albums of all time. And there's a song on there that uses a Fat Albert sample. It's called Illegal Business, and they have this really eerie guitar. It's like, and that blew my mind when I first heard that. So, yeah. Mantronix was out around that time. Tough Crew came out with an album around that time. Oh my God, just everyone exploded around that time. So yeah, man.
Great era.
It was.
So your radio station, you just did that for a couple of years. You were just playing stuff from like 91 and 92. Or you playing the old classics and everything? Or like what were you playing?
Yeah, you know, I would try to keep it fresh. So I was playing a lot of the new stuff. I wanted to play the old stuff, but I was worried that, you know, people wouldn't want to hear something from 89 or whatever. So it was keeping it as, you know, current as possible. So I remember playing, you know, Black Sheep, The Choice Is Yours. As soon as that came out, that was on, and, you know, songs like that. And I had to keep it radio friendly. So anything with cussing, man, I either had to edit out on the fly or just add.
Is this where you become a DJ?
I think my first hosting a radio show, that was my first time doing the DJ thing. Before that, I was, you know, DJing in, you know, little rap groups and stuff like that, and in the studio scratching and stuff like that.
So you started DJing before the radio station then?
Yes, sir.
And you had techniques and everything, or did you have like the starter kit, what are those? The Geminis, the Gemini starter kits? Did you have that instead?
Dude.
Where you scratch it was like a rewind. It was like Shout out my boy Peter Parker. He had a pair of those.
Oh,
man. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Yeah, dude, it was brutal. The struggle is real, man. I had even worse. Like the starter kit you're describing was like what I eventually elevated to. What I started off with was I had a really bad, my dad's like hand-me-downs. I had this really bad realistic mixer from Radio Shack that didn't even have a crossfader on it. And it had, instead of like transformer switches, it had like V toggle switches. So I was trying to transform with these V toggle switches. It was a nightmare. And I had these belt drive mix and match turntables that I picked up on the cheap at these like, you know, stores. And they're awful, man. And they were not meant for scratching. They should have been put out in the pasture a long time ago. But that's what I started with. And a Casio SK1 sampler with like 1.3 seconds of sampling time. And that was my setup. So
yeah. So was there a certain DJ that like inspired you to DJ? Like what made you want to be a DJ?
The legendary Jam Master Jay, hands down, rest in peace to him.
Absolutely.
He's of all time. I love that guy. Just amazing. And I know a lot of cats nowadays are more technical, you know, with what they're doing.
Yeah.
When I listen to Jam Master Jay cut, he's got so much soul in his cuts that even like a simple baby scratch has so much flavor to it. I'll take that any day over like a really complicated like crab scratch. So, yep, JMJ, man, all the way.
Something to say about simplicity.
Yeah, sometimes less is more for sure.
Right. So I want to talk about this phase because from what I read, you kind of walk away from, I don't know if you walk away from hip hop, but you go in a different direction. You start spinning, let's see, house, jungle music, and techno records.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How did you go from all this great culture we got here to spinning? I have nothing against house music and jungle. I have a lot of friends that spin that and it crosses over and drum and bass and all that. But how did that happen?
Yeah, you know, I think what was happening to my ear when the mid 90s hit, the sound of hip hop was changing. And I mean, it would evolve from year to year anyway. But where it was going, and once again, this is like no diss to, you know, mid 90s hip hop. There's a lot of classics now where maybe I was asleep on some stuff during that time. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, there was all this gold and I missed out on it. But at the time I was like, you know, we're starting to get away from samples as much because of what happened to the Biz Markie lawsuit. Rest in peace to Biz.
Absolutely.
And some of the rhyming and stuff like that, I'm like, man, like it's kind of not the way I remember it. And I also really like up-tempo stuff, and like people are getting away from that, and a lot of people are trying to just like do the Chronic over again. And like I just kind of was starting to get away from it. And then as soon as the shiny suit era hit, I was done. I was like, all right, this isn't for me. And I missed out on like, well, still there's all this underground stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I could have stuck with it, but instead I was like, you know, I'm hearing a lot of break beats that I used to love in hip hop being used in drum and bass or jungle. And I'm hearing a lot of rapping and house music now. And like hip house was like a natural transition. So this is up tempo. I'm going to get into this. And that's kind of where like I parted ways with hip hop temporarily. And I look back with regret because I missed out on a lot of great stuff, especially with the DJ culture. You know, all the return to the DJ stuff from the mid 90s and everything. I completely slept on that. So
Let's talk about return of the DJs. Let's talk about what that is.
Yeah. So this is what got me back into hip hop. And basically what it is I was drumming in bands and they had nothing to do with hip hop. And I was just constantly listening to the same music for rehearsals for my band. And I needed a break. And I was on iTunes and I typed in, I forgot what I typed in, but anyway, a Return to the DJ album came up. And what it is, it's this multi-album compilation of different turntablists just doing instrumental tracks that are incredible. And, you know, there's everyone on there from, you know, Mixmaster Mike to Qbert to Tommy T, DJ Format, Z-Trip, a bunch of other DJs, just incredible turntablists. And I happened to hear a song from Tommy T called Aerosol, sorry. And it was all like an homage to Graffiti. And he had like samples from Style Wars mixed with like KRS saying stuff mixed with about to drop a bomb like Vietnam from Artifacts. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? How did I miss this? This sounds like so old school. And then I'm like, it's not that old. And how did I miss this? And that's what got me back into it. And it really inspired me from like a DJ and producer standpoint to get back in the game.
Yeah. So getting back in the game, when did you get back in the game? Technically, what date? Because it says from what I read, 2018 is when you got back in the game. Yeah. So this is like a 20-year hiatus that I'm seeing here. Is this correct? You were spinning jungle and playing in bands for 20 years before you got back to hip hop?
Yeah, dude. Actually, I was spinning house, jungle, and techno, and then it got into trance and stuff only like a few years. And after that, I hung it up and I just went back to my roots, which was playing drums. So that went for like 20 years. Yeah.
So you were a drummer in a band or bands?
Yeah, different bands. Yeah.
What kind of music?
Everything from like pop punk to, I don't know if you remember in the late 90s, there was like a swing rejuvenation with like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and Royal Crown Review and Brian Setzer Orchestra. And I grew up in a house that played a lot of jazz. So I was attracted to that. And so I was playing in swing bands, believe it or not. So very different from hip hop, obviously. And, but secretly in hiding, once in a while I'd slip on some hip hop and I'd be like, man, I remember back in the day I used to listen to this or that. And it was kind of cool, but I never imagined getting back into contributing to hip hop again.
You know, it's funny you mentioned swing band. My grandfather was big into swing music. He was a drummer. He drummed in swing music. His biggest inspiration was Gene Krupa.
Yes, mine too.
And Benny Goodman. Goodman.
Yep.
And I have an uncle, a great uncle, who was a trumpet player. Actually filled in for Benny Goodman, one of the trumpet players on Benny Goodman's one of his sets back then. And that's my background. And my mom used to always say that's why you like hip hop so much is because your grandfather was a drummer and the beat and all that.
Yes.
And
yes.
So I think there's a correlation there, to be honest. I think that, you know, there's no rapping, but the beat and the kind of jazz swing spills into hip hop. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Down. Yeah. 100%.
So I can see how you were in that completely, you know?
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, especially as like you know, quote unquote jazz hip hop was, you know, happening with like what Guru was doing and all that.
Some of my favorite hip hop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, man, for sure.
Gangstar is my fave, but
Yeah. Oh, Gangstar is amazing, man. You know,
that's what I'm saying. When you say you were cutting off in the mid '90s, I'm like, did he miss Gangstar and Wu Tang? You
yeah,
know?
yeah, it was kind of like right after the Fugees dropped their second album, which is their classic one, The Score.
Yeah.
I was done by that point. So I
Yeah.
missed a lot of good stuff.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
like you said, you missed the underground renaissance in the late '90s, early 2000s.
yeah, yeah,
But I hear you. I hear you completely. You know where it went, and it's still a struggle. You know, like, it's still. But I think
right.
luckily there's enough of us nowadays that appreciate these eras that we're talking about. That as long as we band together, we're all right. You know, and you can listen to many different pockets of hip hop now because there's so many different now. You don't have to.
Yeah,
Back then it was like it was one thing or it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like you're either all the way in mainstream major label or you're out. You
yeah,
know,
yep,
and you weren't really going to hear much if it wasn't on a major label. Thank God for the underground renaissance, and then everything with internet and all that, you could get exposed to a whole nother culture,
yeah, absolutely.
and that's what's great now. So you know, going back. So 2018, you start putting out all these projects. They're putting out instrumentals really with
Hmm.
you scratching over them. Is that correct? And I
Yeah,
listen and
I
I
was.
listened to it and it sounds straight 91, 90, 88. It's like you didn't miss a beat. It's like you just started off right where you left off, you know what I mean?
That
Am I
is
right?
absolutely true, man. I'm like, I guess people would say I'm an old head, but guilty as
No.
charged. Um, yeah, man. I was really bitten by that Return of the DJ bug, and I'm like, well, what are they doing? They're taking like really dope, like old school beats that I love, and they're cutting it up over it, and I'm like, I want to do that too. So that's what I started doing, and I think I still had the fire in me from where I left off, and I was just like, you know, like you said, man, there's like so much hip hop right now, and I'm like, you know, if everyone's doing maybe like stuff with trap beats or they're doing like really grimy boom bap, maybe there's a lane for something that sounds a little more quote unquote classic. Let me do that because I love it so much. So I'm just trying to kind of stay in my lane, but you know, hopefully people are liking it and kind of spark up some nostalgia along the way.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. Let's talk about the sound for people that don't know what the definition of like 88 to 91, the sound is different than every other generation that comes after it.
Yeah, yeah. So if we're gonna go back to 88 through 91,
Which
um,
is your goal, your era, right? That's the 86 maybe, 86 to
yeah,
91, whatever. Like
yeah.
whatever your era is. Let's actually talk about the sound. Describe the sound.
Um, I would say first of all, variety. You could have a spot for something like "It Takes a Nation of Millions," and then right next to it, you've got De La with "3 Feet High and Rising."
Right.
Completely, you know, what would seem to be opposite worlds, but if you listen to what's going on in those songs, there's a lot of similarities. So, to my ear back then, you've got samples. First of all, this is
Yep.
before there was like lawsuit after lawsuit. I mean, it wasn't complete Wild West. I mean, you know, a lot of the labels had to do their due diligence, but you know, there was a lot of samples. So you're hearing stuff from the 60s, you're hearing stuff from the 70s, you're hearing kind of this full gamut of funk and jazz and soul, all coming together, and rock, of course, you know, all coming together in this like amazing gumbo, if you will.
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff back then, it was dense and it was layered, and you had like Bomb Squad style production where it's just sound on top of sound on top of sound and like adding noise on purpose. And then if you listen to De La Soul with what they were doing, they were, you know, Prince Paul was like also adding a lot of stuff. It was just like in a different feel, you know, and Dre is doing his thing with NWA, and there's a lot of layers, and it just felt very warm and analog and thick. And if you listen to a song, you could pick out different things each time you listen to it. They're combining break beats with 808s, and you could have slow stuff, you could have fast stuff, and it all just like lived together. And the DJ was more featured back then, I think, you know, and it's not like an ego thing, but I think there's a lot to be said for having a DJ cut and scratch on a track to just give it that extra icing on the cake, so to speak. So I come from that, and I miss that. When I hear, there's no disrespect to trap music or anyone who's in the trap, but it sounds so different than what I'm describing. It's very, to me, synthetic, plasticky. There's not a lot of soul. It's very electronic, which is great, but like Mantronics did a lot of electronic stuff. Miami Bass, there's a lot of electronic stuff there, but it still had that like analog soul kind of warmth to it. So that's what I love, man, and that's what I'm trying to keep going, because I'm thinking, well, maybe if I miss that, there's some other cats out there that miss it too.
Oh yeah, I mean, we like, you know, I'm a little younger than you, you know, but I know all these. I know this era. I actually go back to this era more now than I do even the '90s, because I discover more about it. Like I love like '80s hip hop to me is like, it feels more newer to me than '90s. You know, just because I was a '90s hip hop kid, and I go back. Our era went back, and we were like, you know, we appreciated the whole culture. You know what I mean? Like everything from the moment it started to where we were at now. That's my era. Like you had to know the whole culture for anyone to take you serious in hip hop.
Right.
So it's like, if I didn't know these records, and I didn't know these acts, people like, get out of here. Especially in Boston. Like they'd just be like, you don't know shit. Get out of here. What, you just know Wu-Tang? Cool. Get out of here.
Yeah.
So you had to know everything. Nowadays, you know, and I'm not trying to harp on anybody and be like, you don't know anything, you know, but like nowadays people don't give a shit. Right. I mean, that's just the reality. Like, what you don't, but it's also 40-year-old culture now. There's a lot more to learn, so it's a lot more, you know, studying. But there's a lack of appreciation, I think, for the history that I wish was still there. You know, I mean, it does exist a lot with some of the new artists, but there's just a lot of like, I don't give a shit. And not to say that the people from our generation handle it correctly either, you know. You know, like, well, you know, like, we're like, this ain't hip hop, you know. But
get off my
get off my lawn. I've been doing this for 40 years. You know, there's a lot of that going on. But, you know, shout out my man Glenn from East Coast Store. He's probably understands what I'm saying. But, you know, it's but I think now I will say there's room for everybody with the way things are set up, you know. You don't want everybody to sound the same. I know everybody, you know, I used to say trap music all sounds the same. But if I go back to certain eras, I could see how they were all mimicking what was working at the time. You know what I mean? Even in the '90s, even in the early 2000s, everybody has been trying to mimic what has been successful and making money. So when you hear records like, you know, that was going on from day one.
Absolutely.
But I will say, you know, it's good. You don't want everybody to sound the same. So if a fan of boom bap saying trap music is this, it's like, no, you don't want another boom bap act that's not, you know what I mean? You want everything to be different and sounding different, you know, as a culture. Because you want copycats going to be worse. You know, I remember when everybody wanted to sound like DJ Premier. You know, that was a huge era. It was like, man, this is getting boring. Boom bap was getting boring at that time. You know, now it's like, please play boom bap by any means necessary. So, you know, like, please. But there was a time where everybody was trying to mimic that. So back to my point is, you know, like, I think the more variety, the better. And the fact that you're bringing back this era is awesome. And thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I'm doing my best, man. And I'm not trying to, you know, bite that style or just regurgitate it. But I want to bring things back that have like that sensibility about it. So it's all new stuff, but it sounds familiar at the same time. But I'll never just throw funky drummer on something and call it a day and be like, yeah, I made something new. Like that's not original, you know? But I want to kind of bring back that sensibility of how songs were made to what I'm doing now. And it's because it's what I love, you know? And so it just comes from the heart and the soul, and hopefully people will love it too.
Yeah, and that's what's really matters. You know what I mean? Is that you make something from the heart. You know what I mean? And people tend to connect with that better. You know.
Yeah.
This Night of the Living Jeep Beats, you linked up with SpitSlam on this one, which is Chuck D and C-Doc. Shout out those dudes. Their record label,
Shout out.
indie little boutique label. Oh,
Shout.
he's
Yep.
got the shirt on. Love it.
Got the shirt on. Represent.
How did this whole thing happen?
Oh man, SpitSlam is amazing. So there is a DJ, very, very humble, but amazingly talented. His name is Flatline, and he DJs a bunch of shows. One of them is Hip Hop Gods Radio online.
Yep.
And I had produced a project with Cool G Rap, who is amazing. One of my heroes on the mic for sure. And I made a posse.
I just want to stop you real quick.
Yeah.
I just did a interview with R.A. the Rugged Man.
Nice.
And he said that Cool G Rap is the best lyricist in music ever.
Wow.
Not just hip hop, not music. Like he X'd out Bob Dylan and like John Lennon. He's like Cool G Rap, Bob Dylan, John Lennon. I just thought you'd find that funny.
I love it, man. I love it. I think there might be some truth to that. So
okay. All right, good. So keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good, man. And I tend to ramble, so please cut me off. So basically, I put this track together, and it was a posse cut. And I had my homies from the Outsider Syndicate. They are amazing boom bap posse from the Bay Area. So I had them on this. I had my homie Hub City from Double Barrel, which is a DJ MC combo that I have, and then a great MC from Ohio named Dirty Needles, all come together on this track. And I wanted to make kind of like a gritty boom bap kind of symphony kind of thing, because you don't hear too many posse cuts nowadays. And I was submitting it to different radio stations, and Flatline gave me some love for the track. And we got talking. We really hit it off. He's amazing. I sent him some more stuff. And he shared it with C-Doc over at SpitSlam. Now, C-Doc is another dude that is like super talented, but super humble. He's not in the spotlight a lot. But
at all.
Yeah. Dude, he's great.
He's running that label and has been producing for Public Enemy for 20 years.
Yeah, right? And like,
no one knows.
No one knows. Yeah, and maybe he wants to keep it that way. So sorry, C-Doc, the cat's out of the bag now. But yeah, man. So anyway, I got in touch with C-Doc, and he and I hit it off, and we're like two peas in a pod with our musical tastes, and you know, around the same age, and came up in the same era, and we love the same stuff. And like, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I'd love to sit here and say, oh yeah, and so SpitSlam offered me a deal, and I countered. No, I asked them. I'm like, can I join SpitSlam? And because I've been looking for a home that, you know, has like a family of like-minded people, musicians that love the same kind of stuff I do. And that's how it happened. So my first project with them is Night of the Living Jeep Beats. Was talking with C-Doc, and I said, hey, what can we put out? And is it cool if like we did like a compilation kind of thing where I got to work with some of the SpitSlam artists, and we could do like a Marley Marl In Control kind of thing. And he said, yeah, or like a Terminator X Valley of the Jeep Beats kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, something like that, especially because, you know, Chuck D, you know, owns the label. And that's how the project came about, man. So super blessed.
So did you make that title, Night of the Living Jeep Beats? Was that modeled after the Terminator X album?
Yeah, so that is paying homage to Valley of the Jeep Beats, and I'm also a big fan of zombie movies, so combined my two loves, and got Night of the Living in there, and then we got Jeep Beats. And definitely for everyone out there, not in any way trying to say that this is like the equivalent to the, you know, Valley of the Jeep Beats, or, you know, I'm trying to be Terminator X or anything. That's legendary. I'm not going to touch that. It's paying tribute to, and that's what it is, man.
So let's talk about that era.
Yeah.
For the Jeeps, for those that don't know, that was a big thing. Like, you know, you made music for the cars, and the Jeeps was a popular car at the time because the system sounded better in Jeeps. I had a Jeep Cherokee. with a system. And you could fit a bunch of dudes in there, roll
Yep.
around smoking blunts, listening to music, and it was bumping with the bass.
Yep.
That's a great era. You know, that even carried over into the mid '90s. That went all the way through the '90s. But like the Jeeps and the systems. But man,
Absolutely.
is that was some of the inspiration too? I would imagine.
Yeah, man, for sure. So those days, man, it was all about having an Alpine system in your
Yep.
car. Your trunk is probably not a trunk because it's taken up with speakers, or at least you got a subwoofer back there. And it could be Jeeps, it could be Suzuki Samurais, it could be like Isuzus, like anything, you know, a Geo Tracker, anything that like looked rugged. You're cruising around in that, and it's all about the bass, man. And I remember all these songs that were
Yeah.
coming out. You know, Boom and System by LL,
Yeah.
Cars That Go Boom by Latrim, or not Latrim, correct me. Who's the female rap group that came up with Cars That Go Boom? I
I
can't
don't
think
know
of it.
that one. I can't think of that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, we're stumped.
We're
Someone knows, huh?
stumped. Someone's probably shouting it out right now. But anyway, yeah, a lot of like, you know, and then of course Master Ace with his Jeep Ass N song. I mean, dude, like, he that I think to me is the epitome of like a Jeep song. Before it got changed to like Born to Roll and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that era, man.
What about, remember those just bass albums where it was just like, it
Yeah,
was just bass. Like, it was like, what were those DJs that put some of those? They came from the Bay, I think, too. Like,
yeah,
what were those
yeah.
called? What was some classics from that? There was just like, they were just basically bass CDs that you would play. There was maybe some rapping on it, but mostly just bass.
Absolutely, man. And they would have like warning stickers on the
Yeah.
label that you could blow your speakers out, and that's
Yeah.
actually what happened to me. But I'm more familiar with the Miami scene with that. So you had dudes like Magatron, you had Jealous J, you had DJ Magic Mike.
Magic Mike, that's who I'm thinking of. Shout out to everybody that just said that too on the
Yeah,
feed. Magic Mike CDs, man. Those were
those were
crazy.
yep, yep. And dude, I blew out my system on a I think it was a Magatron. I didn't take it seriously enough. I didn't look at the label, and I bumped it. I was driving by Fun and Games in Framingham arcade, trying to look cool, and I blew my speakers out on that. So
See, like in my area, you could be driving a total piece of shit. Like I had an '86 Cavalier, and it was '95 and '96, and I'm driving around in a Cavalier. I got a shitty ass 15 in the back. My first system was terrible. It was all pawn shop, cheap shit because I had no money. I didn't care. Like, it didn't have to be a nice car. It was covered in rust. I had a booming system. It was falling apart. You could hear me vibrating a mile away. My next system was nice. But yeah, man, like didn't matter what kind of car. Like I live next to Lawrence. So Honda Civics
yep,
with a
yep.
system in it, man, those things would come. You hear them coming a mile away too, man. People must have went deaf in those things, man.
I know.
It was crazy.
It was
But that's what
real.
it was all about. It was all about driving around, getting high, drinking, just or not, and listening to booming the shit out, man.
Yeah.
Now I'm happy. Now your cars come with a pretty good stock system. You know?
Yeah. It definitely helps. But yeah, man, that's why I put 808s in my stuff. I lace them underneath the brake beats because I want people in your car, or if you have a good set of headphones, to feel that bass. It's important to me. Like, you know, I miss that, you know, and I put a lot of delay in my songs because of, you know, it's like, man, when there's a car a couple blocks away, it echoes. And I'm like, I want to do that with the lyrics so that it feels like you're outside and you're getting that echo as it gets closer. So love that. Love that.
My first crappy system, I had now I remember, it was a Pyramid 15. Pyramid wasn't a good brand. They would all tell you like all these wattage, like all these crappy. So it was all about wattage, right, for the subs.
Yeah.
But it depended on the brand, because if it was a bad brand or a cheap generic brand, it could be all the wattage in the world. It's going to sound like crap. But the only song that really sounded good was Eazy-E, Boys in the Hood. And
yeah.
is that what? Do you know what the bass was in that one? What it was? What they used?
I mean, I know that they had 808 kicks on that.
Yeah, so it must have been the 808. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, but you know, Dre laces his stuff with other elements too. So I know 808s were definitely using that, and I'm sure there's
Yeah,
some secret
that was
sauce.
the bass in that one was clean, man, clean.
Yeah, heck yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
and
you've worked with some. I looked at your who you've worked with so far. You've worked with original production and remixes for Cool G Rap, Stetsasonic, Elder Sensei, Large Pro, Black Medine, Sadat X, and then even was this a ninja remix for Lego? You did a remix for Lego?
I did, man. Yeah, there's a cartoon out. It's called Ninjago. If anyone has kids out there, you know Ninjago. And there is a Pyro Viper remix that I did. So anyway, long story short, there's a rock band called The Fold, and they do most of the songs for Ninjago. And I was connected with the lead singer. He's actually a buddy of mine, and I was listening to some of his stuff, and I'm like, I didn't even ask him. I'm just like, I'm gonna remix one of his songs and send it to him and see if he likes it. And he loved it, and he just like tweaked it a little bit or whatever, and then we sent it off to Lego, and they approved. And yeah, I have an official Lego remix, and if you go on YouTube, you can see the video, and there's all these like Lego ninja guys like jumping around and fighting to this song. It's
That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
So where do you live now?
So right now I live out in the Chicagoland area. So I'm not in Philly or Boston or New Jersey. I'm in the Midwest, and I've been here since '96.
Nice. So what do you got planned? What's your plans coming forward? You got anything in the works?
I do. So so a couple years ago, I put out an EP with my homie Hub City under the guise of Double Barrel. So we're like MC and DJ combo, like Gangstar. And we've got a new album coming out. And so that's gonna be coming out on Black Buffalo Records out of Canada. That's gonna be dope, full album.
Cool.
And then I am working with SpitSlam on a really cool album that's going to be a tribute to up-tempo hip-hop, that late 80s, early 90s, stuff like Raw and Follow the Leader and Wrath of Cain and like fast stuff.
So we're talking 100 BPM plus.
Oh, yeah. Like we're talking 110, 120. And yeah. So
did you like the R&B era that came off of that? Like the dancey, like the heavy D and like the snap and like the like how that all went real dancey and fast. Did you listen to that too from that era? Because that was kind of like when I started listening to hip hop, that was kind of on its way out or real popular.
Yeah, man. I did. I had room in my heart at the time for heavy gangster stuff, and then Bust a Move by Young MC. And
right.
Yeah, man, they were both getting rotation. I mean, if someone asked me what my favorite hip hop song is, you expect me to say something from Rakim or something like, from Public Enemy, but it's actually It Takes Two by Rob Bass and Easy Rock. I just love that song. So I'm down with all that. Even some New Jack Swing. Like I love stuff. Yeah.
It's funny because I did a show with Master Ace a couple weeks ago. And he does this thing where he does classics, and he'll be like, "I'll start the rhyme, you finish it." And he did "It Takes Two." I want to rock right now, and then the whole crowd just knows every word. You know what I mean? Shout out my boy Kane; he was screaming it out. He knew every word. He had the tape. So it's amazing. That's very, probably one of hip hop's biggest hits. Looking back on it.
I love it, man. One of the craziest memories I have of It Takes Two was a high school dance. I went to a Catholic school that's not there anymore. It's called Marion High School in Framingham. We got this DJ. I was on the school board or whatever where I would help plan the dances, and I wanted to make sure we got dope DJs in. And we got this dude. He plays It Takes Two, and he follows it up back to back with The Devil Made Me Do It by Paris at a school dance. And it's like,
that's awesome.
We all danced to it, man. Like, people weren't listening to what the lyrics were. It's like, yeah, that's dope. And that sounds dope. And it just all mixed together. So
yeah, the beat.
Good stuff.
I love mixing. I mean, I DJ'd myself, and to me, it was all about the mixing. Like
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I could scratch I was okay, but blending two records together, matching the BPMs and everything, and like creating that experience, that was like my favorite. That was my favorite thing about DJing.
Yeah, man. You can create almost like brand new songs by doing that. And
Right.
one of my favorite things was at the end of every Two Live Crew album, you got the Mr. Mix on the mix, you know, and he had his mega mixes, and it was incredible, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, love that.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm gonna wrap this up, man. It's really great meeting you and talking to you, and I want to stay in contact and support anything you got going on, man. It sounds like you're doing some dope shit, and you've been doing some dope shit, and you're a Massachusetts native.
I am, man. Yep, Boston goes deaf. Yep.
Yeah, so I look forward to hearing more, and keep me in the loop with whatever you got going on. Try to help out any way I can.
Thank you so much, man. I'm honored to be on the show. Anyone who's been spending time watching or listening, thank you so much for hanging out. And yeah, big things coming from SpitSlam in 2022. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Leedz Edutainment podcast with DJ Mrok, and we will talk to you later.
All right, peace.
Peace.